Barnaby's father has bought an aeroplane, said Baby Ted over his porridge and maple syrup. He's taking Barnaby for a ride in it. Oh, nasty, dangerous things, sniffed Mrs. Teddington. Why people want them I do not know. Gadding about in the air and frightening the sheep. If bears were meant to fly, bears would have wings. Baby Ted thought what fun it would be to have wings. Trust Barnaby's father to buy one, grunted Mr. Teddington. Always has to have the latest of everything. Barnaby said I could go for a ride in the aeroplane, said Baby Ted. Can I, Mamma? Certainly not, snapped Mrs. Teddington. I've told you, they're not safe. If Barnaby's father wants to risk life and limb, that's up to him. Baby Ted felt very disappointed. Cheer up, said his father. I've something which is better than an aeroplane, something which belonged to my great-uncle Sprawbetter. I'll take you to see it next week on your birthday. I'll tell Cook to prepare a picnic and we can invite some people. What do you think, Mildred? I had better have a word with Cook, said Mrs. Teddington. You aren't very popular at the moment. She still thinks you stole her blackberry and apple crumble. Cook hummed and hawed a lot and only gave in because it was to be Baby Ted's birthday treat. We'll have Stilton cheese and caviar canapes, announced Mrs. Teddington the day before the picnic, and smoked salmon sandwiches with lemon and cucumber dressing. Baby Ted's face fell. But I don't like caviar canapes. I don't like any of those things, he said. Never you mind, said Cook. I'll make chocolate pudding and a trifle and a great big birthday cake. No, said Mrs. Teddington firmly. Chocolate pudding and trifle, yes, but no birthday cake. No birthday cake? Cried Cook. On the young master's birthday? I never heard of such a thing. Mr. Teddington is getting our son a special birthday cake, said Mrs. Teddington, and I will say no more about it. Cook thought they were going to order a cake from a great big shop called Fortitude and Marzipan, and she banged pots and pans about in a terrible temper. And we will want it all in a hamper, Cook, said Mrs. Teddington, ignoring the din, with the best cutlery and china, and the best Earl Grey Bear tea. Miss Honeypot and Edwin like Darjeeling tea, said Baby Ted. I've asked them to come. It's my birthday, and Barnaby wants to bring his mother and father. Do we have to have that dreadful woman? Snapped Mrs. Teddington. All those feathers make me sneeze. Baby Ted's birthday dawned bright and sunny. The picnic hamper was ready, but Cook was still complaining that she had not made a birthday cake. How many times do we have to tell you, growled Mr. Teddington, that I have not bought a cake from Fortitude and Marzipan? I have not bought a cake. I have not made a cake. The cake is a special cake, but it is not a cake made with eggs and flour. It is not a cake that you can eat. Not a cake that you can eat? Snorted Cook. What good is that? What are you going to do with it? Throw it across the room? Sit on it? Ignore her, said Mrs. Teddington. The guests are arriving. Put your cap straight, Mabel, and go and let them in. Mabel, the maid, shuffled to the door and opened it. Barnaby's mother was standing there in a dress made entirely of feathers. Mrs. Teddington's nose twitched. Barnaby's father strolled into the house, followed by Barnaby, who held out a parcel. Happy birthday, Baby Ted. We brought you a present. It cost a lot of money. Mr. Teddington frowned. The present will have to wait. We're late for the picnic. I don't believe it, gasped Mrs. Teddington, peering through the window. Miss Honeypot Bear and Edwin are coming to the door, and they had that Goldilocks creature with them. Never mind about that now, said Mr. Teddington. We must take the 2 cars and get to the airfield as soon as possible. People will be waiting. What people? Asked Barnaby, as they snuggled into the back of Mr. Teddington's car. I don't know, whispered Baby Ted, but Papa said airfield. We must be going for a ride in an aeroplane after all. But when they reached the airfield, there was not an aeroplane in sight. Nearly all the people from the village had come to the airfield and were gathered round a fire, which burned inside a wall made of bricks. They're burning straw, said Baby Ted. Why are they burning straw, Father? And what's that huge great round thing? That, beamed Mr. Teddington, is your birthday cake. Wow! Exclaimed Barnaby, his eyes even rounder. It's a hot air balloon. It's swelling up with all the air inside it, and it's painted like a cake." "Out of the cars, everyone," bellowed Mr. Teddington. "There's not a moment to lose. Bring the food hampers. We're having our picnic up in the sky." The balloon was now so full of air it was straining at the ropes which tied it to 4 massive poles. "Quick," ordered Mr. Teddington. "All of you, into the basket." Mrs. Teddington was almost speechless. "You surely don't expect me to climb in there," she gasped. "Are you out of your mind, Byron?" "It's perfectly safe," said Mr. Teddington impatiently. "Great Uncle Sprawlbetter went halfway round the world in it." "However will 9 of us fit into one basket?" asked Miss Honeypot Bear timidly. "It doesn't look at all safe to me." "Hold on to my arm," whispered Edwin Bear, offering his other arm to Goldilocks. He was beginning to enjoy himself. "It's so hot," snapped Mrs. Teddington. "The chocolate pudding will have melted, not to mention the caviar canapes." Somehow, after a great deal of pushing and shoving, they all fitted into the basket. Barnaby and Baby Ted sat on the picnic hamper. Then some men from the village untied the ropes, and the great balloon sailed majestically into the air, a big yellow cake dotted about with painted raisins and red cherries. The people from the village jumped and cheered and waved flags. Baby Ted, peering over the rim of the basket, saw them become smaller and smaller. "What a wonderful birthday treat," he said dreamily. "The best ever." "It's certainly very peaceful," smiled Miss Honeypot Bear, giving Edwin's paw a squeeze. "Quite the way to travel." "Can we have some food soon?" asked Barnaby. "I'm getting hungry." The balloon rose higher and higher. "It's not as exciting as an aeroplane," said Barnaby's father. "A bit old-fashioned, don't you think?" "I'm getting cold," complained Barnaby's mother. "I'm only wearing feathers." "Birds wear only feathers," replied Mrs. Teddington, "and they fly higher than this." "Not much," chuckled her husband. "The houses look so tiny now, and the fields are like postage stamps." A cloud floated by. "Don't you think," said Barnaby's mother nervously, "that we ought to go down a little?" "Pull the cord, old chap," said Barnaby's father. "Here, let me do it." He leaned over the side of the basket and pulled the cord, but nothing happened. The balloon rose and rose. "What makes it do that?" whispered Baby Ted. "The hot air inside is lighter than the cold air outside," whispered back Barnaby. Mrs. Teddington gave a scream. "Oh! What's that coming towards us? Is it an aeroplane? Duck, everybody, duck!" "What did you say? A duck?" cried Barnaby's mother. And she wasn't all that wrong. A huge bird with a long, cruel beak, its feathers golden in the sunlight, was flapping towards them. It made straight for the balloon cake and started pecking at the cherries. There was a hissing sound. Air was coming from the balloon in all directions. "We're dropping!" shouted Barnaby's father. "Throw out the ballast!" "What's ballast?" squealed Baby Ted, as his father and Barnaby's father started cutting the ropes around the basket which held sandbags. But although the balloon became lighter, it was still dropping fast. "Throw out the picnic basket!" yelled Barnaby's father, and over the side it went, showering caviar, cutlery, cups, and the chocolate pudding, which fell onto the head of a surprised and delighted cow. "We're going to crash! We're going to crash!" screamed Barnaby's mother. But a sudden wind blew the balloon sideways, and it landed with a great splash in a boating lake. Bears in boats shouted angrily as their decks filled with water. The huge deflated balloon spread over the lake, and the basket rocked gently to and fro. "My feathers are all wet!" cried Barnaby's mother. "We should never have come in the first place. I didn't want to." Barnaby was trying to grab a salmon sandwich floating in the water. "Will no one help us?" roared Mr. Teddington, but all the bears in boats glared furiously, shaking their fists and shouting threats. Then a wonderful thing happened. A tall, white-painted yacht sailed swan-like across the boating lake. At the prow stood Cousin Teddington, splendid in a gold and navy blazer and yachting cap. "Come aboard!" he boomed delightedly. "I love rescuing people. That's it. All aboard! Never mind the water. White fluffy towels and bathrobes on the lower deck. Then up here again for champagne, cocktails and oysters." He still wore the chain with the little elf from the Christmas cracker on it. "I don't like champagne and oysters," said Baby Ted, "and it's my birthday. Do you have any fried bread and sausages?" Barnaby didn't visit for a day or two, but then he arrived with a boastful look on his face. "My father took me for a ride in his aeroplane," he told Baby Ted. "It was so exciting. We looped the loop all over the place." "I still think the hot air balloon was better," replied Baby Ted. "Oh, that," said Barnaby. "As a matter of fact, we flew over the boating lake. The balloon wasn't there any more, but the basket was." "Still floating about in the water?" squeaked Baby Ted. "Yes, and guess what? The great bird that pecked the balloon was sitting on it. She's made a nest on it. She's laid 3 eggs." "3 eggs?" repeated Baby Ted, his eyes shining. "How big were they?" "Oh, as big as ostrich eggs. Big enough for a giant's omelette. Enormous they were. Yellow, with red and purple spots. Dad says you can come for a ride in the aeroplane tomorrow. Bring those flying goggles we gave you for your birthday. You'll be perfectly safe in an aeroplane."